Welcome to Chapter 5, Introducing Pivots of my softball protocol. So far, we've reviewed the footwork for receiving a ball coming to us straight on from a target and one that we're then going to throw straight back to that same target. The purpose of the pivot is to allow us to throw the ball to a target that's not also straight in front of us. In this video, I'll review the proper pivot for throwing a ball towards your glove side as well as towards your throwing hand side for a ball that we're receiving out of the air. I'll then review proper pivots for ground balls. So I'll review angles for a forehand in front, a forehand behind us, and then we'll also do the same for a backhand. The first pivot that we're going to review is where I'm going to receive a ball straight on in the air and then throw to my glove side. In this example, I'm here at third base, and I'm going to be receiving a ball from home plate and then throwing the ball over to second base. The way to do this footwork is we get set at the base, and as usual, we begin with our step to catch. And now the pop, instead of coming straight in front, like I'd be throwing straight on, my pop step comes over in front of my glove side foot and lands towards my target, which is second base right now. And then I can step and I throw. Something important to note about the pop step is that I came in front of my glove side foot. I came over and in front. I still gained ground towards my target, which is second base. I did not step to catch and then come behind, because now my momentum is going completely away from second base and my hips are pointed away from my target. The cones in this drill are important to note because they almost represent a danger zone, if you will, meaning a danger zone for where I put my pop step. If I properly step to catch and I pop in front, notice how I'm coming around what I'm calling the danger zone. If I step to catch and pop behind or shuffle my feet, I've landed in the danger zone. To do this full speed, I get in my ready position, ready for the catch, and then I step, pop, and I throw to my target and always follow through with my back leg. An excellent drill that you can do with a full team to practice this footwork is what we call around the horn. So players will be standing at each base, home, third, second, and first, and will be throwing around the horn in a clockwise fashion. The ball will start at home, go to third, to second, to first, and back to home. It should be the goal for the players to do the correct footwork and get the ball around the horn as quick as possible. When doing the around the horn drill, you can time your team to see how long it takes them to get the ball around the bases for any given number of times, and then challenge them to beat the clock the next time. Once players master the footwork and get really good, one tip to improve the speed on the around the horn drill is where players actually throw the ball. If I'm doing this footwork and wanting to throw the ball over to second base towards my glove side, a good throw would be right to my chest. I step, pop, and I throw. An even better throw is going to be one that's over to my glove side, where I can step closer to my intended target, pop, and throw. It will make my footwork faster and make everyone be more efficient on the field if the throw is just this much more precise. In an ideal situation for this pivot, the ball will either be thrown directly to us or closer to our glove side so we can just turn and take all our momentum toward our target from the step to catch. However, mistakes happen and bad throws will occur that are over to your throwing hand side during this pivot. If I get a bad throw over to my throwing hand side and I step to catch this way, I now have to pop all the way back over towards second base, since I'm at third right now, to get to my target. This is usually where I see players make the biggest mistakes because they step to catch here and then don't know what to do and panic. The best thing to do is take a really powerful pop step and push off our glove side foot and get back to our target. Notice how I was still able to gain some of that ground back towards my target. Mistakes happen when they step to catch and then they just pop right back and replace their foot where it originally was. Here I have a lot less momentum and therefore power, but I also gained no ground back to my target. It's very important to be intentional with the pop step so that we can be as efficient as possible. Lefties, I don't want you to feel left out, so I'm going to do my best to give you a visual representation for when we're throwing counterclockwise around the horn. So home to first to second to third to home. In this case, as a lefty, I'm doing the footwork that the righties would do when we're throwing clockwise around the horn. Lefties, you step to catch, you pop, and then you step and you throw. The next pivot that we're going to review is the inverse of the one that we just discussed. This is when I'm receiving a ball from straight on from first base, and I'm at second base here, and want to throw the ball over to my throwing hand side or third base. To do this pivot properly, I get set at the base, and I step to catch as usual, but now I need to throw the ball right over to my right side, so my pop step comes in front and to my target. My ankle bone is again pointed at a 45-degree angle to my target so that I can just step and throw straight over to third base. I want to take a moment to discuss these cones. These are just a really good visual representation of the path that you should be taking to make this play or to do this pivot. When I step to catch and I pop, I'm coming around the cones and redirecting myself and my power straight to my target. A common mistake players make when doing this pivot is they replace their feet as opposed to trying to gain ground towards their target. This occurs because it feels like it's the fastest and easiest and most efficient thing to do, but in reality is costing us a lot of momentum and therefore power on our throw, making our throws slower and ultimately less accurate. What this looks like is players step to catch, and instead of popping in front and gaining ground towards their target, they replace their feet, which brings all my momentum backwards when I do that. So I'm taking my momentum away from my target and I'm getting myself in a bad, slow position to make a play. Always make sure when you're doing this footwork that you step and you're really intentional with your pop step to be powerful towards your target. What this would look like if I do this pivot full speed is I'm set, ready to catch the ball, I step, pop, and I throw. And I'm always gaining ground and taking momentum towards the target. My lefties, I want to give you a visual demonstration for your footwork when you're throwing clockwise around the horn, because it is different than the righties' footwork. It will be the same footwork that righties use to throw counterclockwise around the horn. So lefties, I'm receiving a ball from home plate and I'm at third base here, and I'm going to try and throw the ball to second base. From my ready position, I step to catch, and then I pop and step and throw. This pivot is another great one to practice with the around the horn drill. So instead of going clockwise around the horn, in this example, we'll go counterclockwise. Start at home, go to first base, to second base, to third base, and back to home, and repeat. As your players get really good at the footwork and doing the around the horn drill, there's one little thing that you can do to help them go a little bit faster, and that's have them be more precise and accurate with their throw. Of course, a good throw that we're looking for is going to be one that's coming straight to a player's chest so that they can then pop and throw to their target. However, if we can get the ball a little closer to the throwing side shoulder and more inside the baselines, we can be even faster because the step to catch would be over this way, which puts me that much closer to then pop and throw to my target. For this pivot, obviously the best throw is going to be one that's inside the baseline. However, mistakes and bad throws happen. So let's review what to do when the ball is coming way over to your glove side, but you're trying to throw the ball over to a target that's on your throwing hand side. If I'm doing this drill and I'm here ready and I want the ball here, but instead someone throws it over here, I need to be really intentional to pivot back towards my target and try and gain as much ground as I can with my pivot back towards my throwing target. I also need my pivot to be a really powerful step so that I can garner as much momentum as I can going in that direction. This is why replacing your feet is not ideal, because if I step over here and just replace my feet, I took all my momentum backwards towards where I was replacing instead of taking a powerful pop back towards my target. There's also one thing that you can do as always a last resort if the throw is really far away towards your glove side, and that's called the spin. So this happens when the throw's really out wide here and all my momentum is going away from my target. In this way, I'm going to use the momentum and velocity of the ball to carry me around in a spin and get myself going back towards my target. To do the spin, I step to catch and the ball's taking my glove back, so I allow that to happen. And as I spin, the first thing that turns is always my head to find my target. And I pop, and then I can throw. The head turns first so that we can see our target. And the second most important thing is your pop step. When I step to catch in the spin, I don't pop and replace my feet because I'm losing momentum and not gaining ground back towards my target. I always want to be intentional with the pop step, so I step to catch and I push off and pop back towards my target, and then I can step and I throw. Also notice where my throwing side foot lands on the pop and how it lands. This is a very small detail, but will help improve the accuracy and velocity of your throw. I step to catch, and when I spin and pop back, my toe is pointed towards my target. This will help us get in the right position to make the throw. If my toe is pointed off target, my throw is also more likely to be off target. For my lefties, I don't want you to feel left out on the spin move, so I want you to get an example of what this might look like. I have never done this before, full disclosure, so I'm going to do my best to give you a visual representation. But if I'm a lefty and I'm going to do a spin move, that means that I'm going to catch the ball way out here, pop back, step, and throw. I know the spin looks really cool and is a really fun pivot to do. However, this is absolutely a last resort because we are taking our eyes off our target, and it does take more time to spin than it does to pivot correctly. The spin should really be your last resort, and to know when to do the spin versus the pivot is going to depend on you practicing and understanding where you are relative to the catch and where your target is. For me personally, I just kind of let the ball tell me which spin or pivot I needed to do. If the ball was so far that I was going to catch way out in front and let the ball kind of take my glove back and begin the momentum of my spin, that's when I spun. If I could catch the ball inside my shoulders and stick the catch and be strong, that's when I chose to do the pivot instead. Definitely practice both and get used to the feel of both the spin and the pivot to figure out what works best for you. Ultimately, the best play is going to be the one that gets the ball to your target and gets the job done. Now that we've reviewed proper footwork and pivots for receiving balls out of the air, it's time to move to ground balls. We're going to first start with ground balls that are in front to our forehand, which means our glove side. These are usually slow rollers or balls that aren't hit quite as hard that we're charging and able to take a good angle towards first base. In this example, I'm at shortstop. This can easily be done for third baseman, second baseman, and even our outfielders. When I'm going to receive this ground ball, I'm going to take an angle in front to catch the ball, and then when I step and pop, I go straight towards my target, step and throw. In my opinion, this isn't really a pivot. It feels like you're going straight on if you're doing the footwork properly, but it's something that's important to acknowledge. The real key of the forehand in front angle is that we're setting ourselves up to get this ball going straight to our target to begin with. So usually when I'm at shortstop, if I have a ball out in front, I'm finding a way to cut this ball off in a manner that I'm going to be going straight towards first base or towards my target. I would get in trouble if I were cutting this ball off and going away from first base or deeper angled towards the outfield grass almost at first, as opposed to straight to the base. Same for if I cut this ball off too soon and was now going maybe towards the pitcher's mound instead of towards first base. The next pivot that we have for a ground ball out in front would be an example of me here at shortstop, and there's a runner on first and second, and I want to take this ball and throw it to third base. Here I would step to catch, and I use my same pivot for in the air to pop and throw back over to third base. Next, let's review pivots you might use for a ball that's hit to our forehand side, but is hard hit and one that we're taking a deeper angle back behind us to field. In this example, there's two main pivots that we're going to use, and they might sound familiar. They're the pivot that we learned for the ball out of the air, where we bring our pop step back towards our target, but the second one is also now the spin. where we can get back to our target. Let's start with the pivot that's going back to our target. In this example right now, I'm at shortstop and I want to throw the ball over to first base. When I go to step to catch to field this ball, notice how all my momentum is going into the outfield. So it's really important that I have my weight on the inside of my glove side knee so that I can powerfully pop back towards my target and step and throw. If in this instance, I would replace my feet, this is where I'm really losing momentum. I step to catch, and now I replace my feet and throw. It's really hard for me this way to bring momentum back towards my target and be strong on the throw. So make sure that when you're doing the pop step, you're intentional and powerful toward your target. The second way to field this ball that's a deep angle back is going to be our spin move. Again, the spin is really a last resort and is usually a case where I'm reaching so far for the ball that I have no opportunity to really get my balance on my glove side foot to push off for the pivot. And so I'm going to let the momentum of the ball on the catch bring me around through my spin. How to do the spin for a ground ball is I would step to catch like normal, but usually it's going to be something like I'm really reaching, and I try as best as I can to push off and come back towards my target and try and gain ground back towards my target. The biggest thing with this is really a mental thought of bringing my momentum back towards my target, because if I don't think of gaining ground back towards my target, it's really easy on the spin move to just keep going away from your target and lose a lot of power on the throw. Let's break down the spin move a little bit more for the ground ball. Similar to the ball in the air, once I step to catch this ball, the first thing that turns in my priority are my eyes turning towards my target. My head should be leading the spin, my shoulders and lower half follow. The second really important point for the spin is my throwing side foot and my toe getting pointed towards my target, towards where I'm throwing, because my shoulders and everything else will follow. After I step to catch and catch this ball for the spin move, watch my throwing side foot toe where it lands. It's back pointed towards my target to where I want to throw. This is going to give us a stronger, more accurate throw. For this forehand angle ball that is kind of back behind us, and you have your two pivots now that you've learned, the pivot back where you can push your pop step back towards your target versus the spin, it's really important to understand when to use either one. First and foremost, the spin move is slower and is more difficult because we're taking our eyes off our target and is always going to be a last resort. However, it is necessary, and for me personally, I did this spin move anytime I was really reaching for the ball and was kind of mid-sprint going completely away from my target. I used the pivot as much as I could because this is a stronger movement, is easier to control, and will make me more accurate and efficient if I can do that. Ultimately, what decided whether I do the spin or the pivot was the ball. I never tried to force one or the other. I had to read the play and understand how I was about to catch the ball, and then understand where I was on the field and where I was about to throw to figure out which pivot made sense. This really came from a lot of practice and experimentation with both pivots, so it's really important to practice both, get used to the feel of both, and understand what positions you are in the field to make a read on a play and decide which pivot will help you make the play best. For my lefties, I will do my best to give you some visual demonstrations of all of the footwork here. We'll start with the forehand. If I'm a lefty, I'm going to step to catch, and if I'm popping back over to first base, which is over here, I'm going to pop, step, and throw. If you're somewhere else on the field, let's say we're in right field now, and I want to throw this ball to second base. If I step to catch, I'm right on target to pop through, step, and throw right back to second base. It's time for me to try to demonstrate the forehand deep angle pivot. If I'm at shortstop here and I'm a lefty, I step to catch this ball. And then if I want to throw, let's say to third base, then I can pop, step, and throw. If I'm in a position where I need to get this ball all the way back over to first base, This is why it's really hard for lefties to play shortstop. They step to catch, and then they have to pop all the way around, step, and throw. This pivot is probably more realistic for a lefty that's, say, playing left field and wanting to throw the ball to second base. What this looks like is our lefty is running back at an angle, steps to catch, and then pops and throws back over to second base. Next, let's review the spin for our lefties. The spin for our lefties is going to look like this. They step to catch the ball, and then they pop back towards their target, step, and throw. The next pivot and ground ball that we can field is going to be a backhand angle, so over to my throwing hand side, out in front of us. This is what we call a backhand rake through. To do a backhand rake through, usually I'm charging the ball and I've been running, and now I step to catch, I rake through the catch, pop, and I throw. There's a lot to break down there. Let me move this cone out of the way so you can see what a rake through really means. So as I've been running, again, there's kind of two steps to get ready for the backhand rake through. There's the prep step with your throwing side foot, and then there's the step to catch with your glove side foot. Notice how I'm in a completely different position than normal when I'm catching a ball. Normally I'm here on the catch, but now my toes are pointed towards the side. This is one of the few exceptions to where our toes are pointed. But my toes are going to be in a parallel line to the path of the ball. What I mean by this ball is rolling this way, parallel to the line of my feet. If I'm in a position where the ball is rolling this way at me, the rake through is going to be awkward. Same for if the ball's coming this way. That's an awkward rake through. I want to get my feet set in a path that's parallel to the path of the ball. The next thing to note on the catch is my glove gets prepared early. As I'm approaching this ball, I'm getting my glove low already when my throwing side foot is landing to get ready for the catch. Ideally here, I'm catching the ball around the same time as my glove side foot is landing, just like usual for our step to catch. However, the difference in the backhand rake through is my fingers are down and literally raking through the catch. And as I'm doing this, I'm taking my momentum from my throwing side foot through and forward, because the next step is pop, and then I step and I throw. The last thing that we need to break down with the backhand rake through is going to be your glove side arm. When I'm fielding a backhand, my elbow is up and my fingertips are down. And when I come through, my elbow is the thing that comes up to transfer and step and throw. Let's put the steps together in the backhand rake through. I'm approaching, I step to catch, pop, and I step and I throw. I'm at shortstop here, and this is an example of how I would do a backhand rake through to first base. However, the pivot here is really versatile for anything. So once I approach and I step to catch, I can pivot towards third base if I want to throw a runner out at third base. I can step to catch, I can pivot over and throw to second base if I want to get a runner out at second base. Your pop step is versatile. Wherever you take your throwing side foot and point it is kind of where your target is and where you can throw the ball. Let's break down the glove work for a backhand rake through a little bit more. The first and most important thing is to get your glove prepared early. If I'm approaching this ball, I'm getting my backhand glove ready as I'm running and getting low as soon as I can. Then I'm raking through all of this ground. It's called a rake through because you're literally raking your glove through the dirt. On a backhand, it's easier to start at the lowest possible point you can catch the ball, which is the ground, because it's easier to come up with a short hop or a bad hop than it is to start high, and this is where players end up stabbing at the ball. When we stab at the ball, it's really easy to mistime the ball, but this is also really awkward to then try and make a quick transfer, versus if I'm here raking through, it just naturally kind of can come up to my throwing hand shoulder. Something else that's important to note is kind of the angle of my glove. When I'm raking through, my fingertips are straight down in the dirt. I'm not like this because if the ball's rolling, it's just going to hit the tips of my glove. But also something that's really easy when players are first learning the backhand is the glove needs to be open to the ball like so, but players will often be on the sides and miss the ball that way. For the lefties, I want to try and give you a visual representation of what the backhand rake through looks like. So as I'm approaching this ball, my toes come parallel to the path of the ball and my glove gets prepared early. Fingers in the dirt, I rake through the catch, pick it up, pop, and then throw. Let's review common mistakes with the backhand rake through. Probably the most common mistake I see is players do not get their glove prepared early and end up stabbing at the ball. What I mean by preparing the glove early is as I'm approaching this ball, I'm already getting my glove low to the ground and being low and raking through the catch. However, players make mistakes when they're not preparing to make the catch early and they're here and have to end up stabbing to catch the ball. Stabbing the ball requires timing, and if our timing is off, we're going to miss the ball. It also makes us lose some finesse that we have on the catch if we're stabbing at the ball versus raking through with a slow, controlled motion. Players also make mistakes on the backhand rake through because the toes are parallel to the catch and kind of in a line, and it's really easy here for players to either replace their feet or go behind. So if I'm on the catch, I'm doing my usual step, pop, and throw, where my pop is in front of my glove side foot. But in this position, sometimes players end up standing up and replacing their feet, or they feel like they need to go behind. We've already reviewed at length why replacing the feet and going behind is less efficient and therefore less optimal than popping in front. The final very common mistake players make when doing the backhand rake through is they stand up. They do a great job of approaching the ball, getting ready, and making the catch, but instead of staying low through the pop step, they make the catch and stand up and then do some kind of footwork and get rid of the ball. Standing up causes us to waste time because it takes time to stand up, but more importantly causes us to lose momentum because I'm taking my energy and pushing it straight up instead of out towards my target. The last pivot that we need to review is what to do when you're fielding a ball to your backhand that's at a deep angle. These are going to be really hard hit balls. For me right now, I'm at shortstop, so think of a hard hit ball in the 5-6 hole or the gap between the shortstop and third baseman. This is the footwork I would use. However, this is not only for shortstops. A third baseman might use it. A second baseman might use it when they're fielding a ball up the middle and need to throw back to first. Left fielder might use the ball if they're taking a back angle and need to get a ball going back to second base to prevent the runner from going from first to second. So I'm just at shortstop right now as an example, but do know that this footwork is truly applicable no matter where you are on the field. The first thing to understand when we're fielding a backhand deep angle behind us is that you can catch either off your glove side foot or off your throwing side foot. And then we have a third option for the pivot, and that's going to be what I call the Derek Jeter throw that I'll get into later, but that's an absolute last resort. Let's first begin with the simplest one, and that's where I end up fielding the ball off my throwing side foot. If I've been running towards this ball and end up catching it off of my throwing side foot here, I'm doing what I call a rock and a fire for a backhand. So I'm rocking through the catch and getting momentum on the inside of my throwing side knee, transferring as I rock, and then throwing off that foot back to my target. This is one of the very rare cases where we don't end up doing all three steps of our footwork. Essentially, the pop step and the step to catch become one because I'm rocking back with the catch and throwing. So without the cone, if I've been charging this ball, I'm rocking back on the catch and then pushing off and throwing as hard as I can. It's really important to rock back and kind of ease back with the catch because that's what's giving us the power in our lower half to get the ball over to our target. Something else that I hope you noticed while I was demonstrating is how low to the ground I stayed. If I've been running for this ball, I want to stay low on the catch and I don't want to stand up. As soon as I stand up and exert my energy vertical, I'm losing all of my power that could have been going towards my target. When I stay nice and low, I have all this power and energy in my lower half to then take and throw back towards my target. So that's our first option for how to field a backhand deep angle. The second option is going to be how to field this ball when I end up catching it off my glove side foot. I kind of have two options here depending on where the ball is, where I'm at on the field, and what my momentum is doing. If I'm in a position where I've been running for this ball and I field it off my glove side foot, if I don't have much momentum going back and I have enough control and balance in my glove side foot here to pop back forward out in front and throw the ball, this is our ideal scenario. We're gaining ground back to our target. We're being powerful with our pop step to have as much velocity as we can on our throw. That's your ideal scenario. So again, I have the ball in my glove already, but I've been charging this ball. I step to catch it, and then I pop back and I throw towards my target. That's ideal. However, ideal situations don't always happen, so you need to know what to do if you cannot get your pop step back towards first base. If you're in a position where you end up really extended for this ball and catch it, and you need to take another step back and essentially rock and fire it back to first base, that's okay too. It's going to happen. But the important thing is that you're, again, staying low and getting as much power in your lower half as you can. That brings me to our final option for fielding a ground ball that is deep to our backhand angle, and this is what we call our Derek Jeter throw. First of all, to my outfielders, I'm sorry, the chances that you'll ever do this throw are probably slim to none. This is a throw that you're more commonly going to see a shortstop make, which is what Derek Jeter was, very deep in the 5-6 hole. This is a do or die play. Alternatively, your second baseman can absolutely do this when going deep up the middle and needing to throw the ball back to first base. Again, I say this is a do or die play because as you'll see as we go through the footwork, there's almost no power at all coming from our lower half, and it's all upper half. I'd like to break down the Derek Jeter style throw a little bit more. So if I'm running for this ball in the 5-6 hole and I'm about to catch the ball out here, I catch this ball off my throwing side foot, take one step transfer, jump, and throw. Notice how I jumped and threw off of my glove side foot and got my shoulders turned back, pointed towards my target, which right now is first base. If I wanted to do this play and throw to second base, I would again catch off my throwing side foot, turn and jump and throw off of my glove side foot back to second base. This is really why this play is so hard to make in softball, is because it takes a lot of upper body strength and time to get the ball all the way over to first base. In baseball, they might have a little bit more upper body strength and they definitely have more time to get the ball over to first base, so this play may be more commonly seen there. However, we can still try and make this play in a do or die situation when we have no other option. Let's review how you even choose which of these three great options I gave you for fielding a ground ball. First and foremost, our most effective method of fielding a deep angle backhand is going to be any time that I can field this ball and then pop back towards my target, because I'll have the most momentum, power, and therefore velocity on my throw. The second most ideal option, if you will, is going to be either of the rock steps. So if I field this ball off my throwing side foot, that's a rock and a throw, or off of my glove side foot, that's a step back rock and a throw. Either of those two are kind of going to be second choices because, again, we're not able to gain ground and have quite as much momentum going back towards our target as if I can pop back to my target. And our third and final option is the Derek Jeter kind of all-star play. That one is super fun to do, however, very, very hard to actually execute, especially in our game of softball where we have so much less time and not quite as much upper body strength as Derek Jeter did to make that throw. However, I think the most important thing to consider when you're doing any of this footwork is that you need to be adaptable. I just showed you footwork for whether you catch the ball off your glove side foot or off your throwing side foot. So you need to recognize this as you're doing the play and then say, okay, well, this is the footwork I'm going to do if this happens. And this really comes from a lot of practice and putting yourself in these different situations and figuring out what you need to do so that you can make it more efficient for next time. And then eventually this will just kind of become your instinct to do as you're fielding ground balls. So start with no ball and do the footwork and make sure you're in the right position. Then have someone roll the ground balls. And then eventually you can progress to have someone hitting the ground balls. And now you can kind of play with all of the different options and see which one you need to do depending on how hard a ball is hit, how deep of an angle you had to take, and then where you're throwing the ball to. All of this is going to play into your decision, and you really need to be adaptable in the moment and kind of let the play develop so that you can then respond with the correct footwork. Okay, lefties, I'll do my best to demonstrate the backhand angles that you might be using in the field. So from the ready position, if I end up catching this backhand off of this foot, I'm rocking back with it, and then I throw. There's no step, pop, throw, it's all kind of one. It's a step, rock, and then throw. So I'm here rocking back on the catch and then throwing through. The same is going to be similar if I end up catching this ball off my glove side foot. So I've been going to get this ball, I catch it here, I take the step to rock back and then step back and throw to my target. For the last section of the video today, I want to do some demonstrations at close to full speed for my visual learners. We'll start off with the forehand out in front, and then we'll do a forehand deep angle, and then do the same thing for the backhands. We're going to start with the forehand angle out in front, and this is the first step of the progression until we can get ground balls hit to us. So I have my lovely demonstrator here, Kirsten, to help, and she's going to be rolling me the ball from close. The next one is going to be the forehand deep angle, and we're going to start off with the pivot, and then we'll do the spin. The next one is going to be our backhand rake through for a ball that we're able to catch in front. The next one is going to be backhand deep angles, and the first example we'll do is where I field the ball off my throwing side foot, and I'm able to slow my momentum with the catch to do the rock and fire footwork. This next example is going to be the backhand deep angle, where I'm now catching the ball off my glove side foot, take that extra step, rock into my throwing side foot, and then throw. This next demonstration is going to be that Derek Jeter style throw. This is our do or die play when we have a deep angle backhand. Thank you for watching Chapter 5 of my softball protocol. Stay tuned for Chapter 6, where I'll review the proper fundamentals of fielding a fly ball. Let me know what questions I can answer for you.